much for your time, everybody. My name's Sean Graham from Solutions for Accounting. As I said before, I think I know the majority and have spoken to the majority of you in the past. There's a couple of names that I don't recognise, that maybe people I've not spoken to, or may just be showing my memory's not as good as it should be on that side of things there. So this morning's webinar will last about an hour and is going to go through the Sage SIM50, introducing SIM50 on there. Just on that side of things. Sorry, I've got beeps as people are being administered, sort of joining as we go along, and I've got colleagues doing that. So just give me a moment while I have a list of people coming through. So welcome everybody to the webinar on there. As I say, the agenda for the webinar is I'm going to give a brief introduction of Solutions for Accounting, although the majority of people on this webinar are existing customers and will already know us on that side of things. I'm going to go over a brief timeline of the Sage 50 manufacturing products and around the announcement that Sage have recently made to it, reasons why it's important and reasons to consider moving from the Sage 50 manufacturing solution on there. I'm then going to give an overview of SIM50 on there and details around that. Go through some of the key features of the product and a brief overview demonstration of the product. I'm then going to talk about sort of data migration, the commercials around the SIM50 product, a bit of information on the roadmap, and showing the development that SIM50 have got planned on their system there, and also what I'm going to then go through is talk about the next steps on that side of things there. So Solutions for Accounting were established as a business in January 1998, initially providing accounting solutions on there, and are one of the sort of leading Sage business partners on there. As the business has grown and the sort of computerized software industry has sort of grown on there, we've moved more from just providing simple accounting solutions on there to a more fully encompassed business solution on there, which is where we've taken on other areas of software that businesses will use to run their business, so like the manufacturing solutions on there, and also CRM solutions on there. So you can see we're also a partner for Salesforce and act as CRM solutions in there. We've been working with Sage Manufacturing since Sage launched it in 2003 on there. So I've got nearly 20 years experience in the manufacturing software arena on there. We've also got 6 of our staff already accredited in the SIM50 product. We went through the training on that earlier this year on that side of things there. So in relation to the Sage 50 manufacturing solution, the Sage 50 manufacturing solution was originally written by a company called Promise in the mid-1990s, and was then acquired by Sage in 2003 on there. So the Sage 50 manufacturing solution is quite a mature product in that side of things in there. Over the last half dozen years, Sage haven't really done much in terms of new developments on the product on there, which is partly down to the maturity of the product and its stability on there. And so what you will have seen over the past half dozen years is really the developments have been along the lines of bug fixes to the product and making sure that it remains compatible with the latest versions of Sage 50 accounts on there. So what Sage announced in the middle of August was that from the 1st of October this year, the Sage 50 manufacturing product is going to enter what Sage refer to as extended support. What that means is they will only be supporting the product for another 12 months. So after the 30th of September 2021, Sage will no longer be supporting the Sage 50 manufacturing product on there. What they'll be doing is making sure that it remains compatible with the latest version of Sage 50 accounts, which is due out any day now, which is going to be Sage 50 accounts 27 on there. And from the 1st of December, they're going to stop selling the product going forwards on there. That doesn't mean that the product will stop working after September next year, but what it does mean is that Sage won't be testing it with later versions of Sage 50 accounts. So chances are you wouldn't be able to upgrade if you were using it after September 2021. You wouldn't be able to upgrade your version of accounts because likelihood is it won't link with Sage 50 manufacturing on there. It would also mean that after that time on there, the only support that we would be able to offer you around the program would be a best endeavors support, because we wouldn't be able to call on Sage themselves for any more support on that. And that's one of the reasons that you will see as we send out renewals for the support going forwards on there, we will only be offering you support up until the 30th of September 2021. So for those of you that maybe haven't had next year's support renewal yet, we won't be offering a full year's support on there. We'll be time apportioning it till the 30th of September on that side of things there. I'll talk a bit more about that and moving forwards towards the end of the presentation on there. What I've also included in the screenshots here are some hyperlinks which we'll send out with the recordings to Sage's announcement on that side of things, and some more information from our website that you can download on there. But for the majority of you, I think you'll see that it's probably repetition of the emails that you've already had out from us on that side of things on there. So reasons to consider moving from Sage 50 manufacturing on there is, as I said, the Sage 50 manufacturing products is a very mature product. It's actually based on SQL 2005 as a platform on there. And while it does will work with later versions of SQL on the system there, to run it on later versions of SQL, you need to run a backwards compatibility tool on that side of things on there. That tool is no longer being supported or provided by Sage on there. And what that causes on that side of things on there is that if you are looking to move your Sage to another, you move your Sage to a new server or restore to information on there, Sage won't have upgraded, it won't necessarily be supported on new operating systems or new versions of SQL on that side of things. So offers, a risk from a data recovery point of view on there. The other points obviously are that the support from Sage is ending and there's going to be no sort of further development on the solution there. So in terms of SIM50 and sort of bit of background on that product and SIM services that are the software authors on there, SIM services have been around since the early 90s on there. They originally started out providing support and services around a legacy manufacturing system called Swan Manufacturing, which integrated to the, again, legacy Sage Line 100 products on there. They then took on the Promise product before Sage acquired it on there and started offering manufacturing support to manufacturing SME companies covering both Sage 50 manufacturing and later Sage 200 manufacturing on there. During that time of supporting manufacturing companies, they did quite a lot of work offering bespoke add-ons and developments alongside the Sage 50 manufacturing solution on there. So wrote developments around things like stock takes, more detailed costing modules, and barcoding solutions to link to the Sage 50 product on there. In sort of mid 2015, they identified that they were doing a lot of work around the side of Sage 50 manufacturing on there. They'd also seen, as sort of mentioned before, a lack of development on the Sage manufacturing product on there. So they began their own project to scope out and write their own Sage 50 manufacturing equivalent program on there. So they spent the second half of 2015 scoping out that information, that project on there. They started coding work in January 2016, and as part of their writing of a product, they were very conscious that they wanted to write a product that covered all the modules that the Sage 50 manufacturing module did, which are sort of noted down on the slide there. But rather than trying to rush out and get a product out or a software solution out that was missing modules on there, they wanted to wait till they'd completed all of those modules on there. So that work was completed in April 2017. They then, in May 2017, started a beta release with 3 of their existing sites on there that were all live using the software by the September of that year. And at that point, issued a full release in August 2017 on there. And since then, they've now got around 90 companies using SIM50 solution on there. That 90 companies equates to roughly around 500 users across those 90 installations on there. What they then later released in April 2018 was a shop floor data capture module, which is a barcode scanning solution on there. Where that goes further than the Sage 50 manufacturing shop floor data capture module is it isn't just used to capture time and operation times against works orders like the Sage module is. It's also designed for recording stock movements on there. So being able to scan goods in against purchase orders, scan goods that are being issued to works orders on that side of things there. So since the 2018 release, the cadence of the releases that Sim50 have moved to is they are releasing a full version once a year, typically in January, and also releasing quarterly service packs throughout the year to add in smaller updates and user requests that go through the system on there. The big news for Sim50 on there was that in August 2020, prior to Sage making their announcement, Sim50 was recognized as a Sage ISV solution or independent software vendor solution on there. And to become one of those, what that means is Sage have sent the Sim50 software away to a third-party testing company to test both the integration with Sage 50 accounts, but also the program itself on there. And on the back of that successful testing, Sage have awarded it as an ISV solution, which means that Sage are endorsing the Sim50 product on there. In fact, from now going forwards, any company that registers an interest to Sage for a manufacturing solution to link to their Sage 50 accounts, Sage are passing them the details of the Sim50 product and passing them the details of a Sim50 accredited business partner like ourselves on that side of things there. So in terms of Sim50, as I've mentioned, has very similar modules to the Sage 50 accounts program on there, but is slightly different in the way that it is sold and that users can take advantage of it, in that it's a far more modular solution than the Sage 50 manufacturing solution was. So the core module that you get is the stock control module on there, but then users can add in the module. Users can add in the modules that they want and are applicable to their business on there. So, for instance, if you don't do one-off jobs and things there, you don't need the quotations module. What you could have, if you're a business that uses the bills of materials but doesn't and uses works orders but doesn't use planning and MRP, you can just have the bill of materials and the works order modules on that side of things on there. So in terms of just a quick overview of some of the key features around Sim50 and its individual modules, what try to do is break it down into sort of 4 areas on the system there. So things that relate to the usability of the product, things that demonstrate the integration between Sage 50 accounts and Sim50, areas where Sim50 can be customized on there, and areas where Sim50 offers greater control or users greater control of the system on there. So in terms of usability, as I sort of mentioned, SIM services were Sage 50 manufacturing business partners. So the SIM 50 has been written retaining lots of the majority of the functionality that Sage 50 manufacturing had. It's all been written new, so it's not using any of the Sage codes on that side of things on there. What it's also got as part of it is there is a migration tool to take to take Sage 50 manufacturing data into SIM 50, and I'll touch on that again a bit later on there. The other thing that SIM 50 has done is it's stuck very much to the user interface of Sage 50 accounts on there. So at points, the Sage 50 manufacturing product did look very, very similar to Sage 50 accounts on there. But as Sage 50 accounts has been upgraded and had some changes made, it's sort of lost a bit of that commonality. SIM 50 have looked to bring that information back on that side of things there. From an integration point of view, just like with Sage 50 manufacturing, the data between the two programs is shared. It's real time. It's not a case of batch updating one to make changes in the other program on there. But a couple of key things that SIM 50 offers is the functionality around backups of SIM 50 will incorporate a backup of the account's information at the same time, which is functionality Sage 50 manufacturing used to have, but with subsequent releases of Sage 50 accounts got sort of broken on that side of things there. So SIM 50 brought that back. So when you take a backup of your manufacturing data, it will take a backup of the accounts data at the same time on there, and you've got the ability to automate that information on the system there. In terms of customization, SIM 50 allows you in each module to add up to 20 analysis codes in each area, so 20 additional bits of information that you can record against your stock records, your bills and materials, your works orders, and that information can then be used on reporting and customization, and reporting customization within the system on there. What SIM 50 also do to help users make sure that the data recorded is correct and entered in the correct format and can be used consistently in reports on there is that you can determine the type of field that the type of information you're entering into a field. So items can be set as either being a text field, a numeric field, date fields on there, or Boolean, so yes, no fields on that side of things there. Obviously, setting items as a numeric field makes it very easy when you're running reports that you can, add up and produce totals of that, safe in the knowledge that somebody's not going to put in a letter A or something like that that breaks the information on there. The other thing about SIM 50 is it uses Crystal Reports as its reporting tool on there. That's because Sage don't provide their report writer in the SDK developers kit on there. What that does mean is, as part of the solution, you get a read-only version of Crystal Reports on there. For editing reports, it's either a case of working with a business partner like ourselves, or if you've already got a copy of Crystal Reports, which is industry standard reporting tool on there, you can edit your own reports on that side of things there. A couple of nice features on the control side of things that exist in SIM 50 on there is, one is that across the system, SIM 50 will keep an audit log of changes that have been made. So, for instance, against stock records, it will keep a record of every time somebody changes a field within that stock record, recording and timestamping who made that change and what the change was from and to on the system there. SIM50 also offers a much deeper level of access rights control on there. So you've got the ability to allow people to say whether you want people to actually be able to change things or just view records in there. But what SIM50 also allows you to do is you can control what somebody can change within a record on there, or what they can see within a record on there. So you might allow somebody to view a stock record and be able to change certain aspects of a stock record, but things like a nominal code that relates to the accounts, you can say, well, I don't want them being able to change that information in there. So in terms of the stock control side of things on there, again, one of the big differences between SIM50 and the Sage 50 manufacturing product on there is that all of the stock record information that is held in Sage 50 accounts is accessible and amendable and able to put on a view screen within SIM50 on there. So things like, it was always a bit of a minefield of where should you create a product in the Sage manufacturing solution, because there was certain information that sat in the accounts like nominal codes and certain information that sat in the manufacturing on there. In SIM50, all of that information is available within SIM50 on there. And also on list views, you're able to see things like the quantities in stock and quantities that are being allocated, quantities on order on that side of things, that again, historically was only available in Sage 50 accounts on that side of things from a list view point of view on there. Within SIM50, you can carry out all the same stock transactions that you would within Sage 50 accounts, which includes receiving in purchase orders, receipting sales orders on that side of things. The other thing that it does allow you to do is you do have the ability to make adjustments to sales orders, dispatches, or purchase order receipts in there. So if you have the situation where somebody has mistyped a quantity that they have received on an order in there, in Sage 50 accounts, you would have to go through and actually make an adjustment to the quantity in stock on there. In SIM50, you can actually make an adjustment to that purchase order receipt, provided those stock items are still in stock on that side of things there. So it gives you effectively an undo button or a correction button on there. From a control point of view, in SIM50, traceability, rather than being a system-wide setting, is controlled at individual product level on there. So you can identify whether a particular product is a traceable item, and you can then say whether it's a batch traceable item or a serial number traceable item. Again, 50 manufacturing only allowed you to have batch numbered items on there. The quarantine function in SIM50, again, is far stronger and far more flexible than in Sage 50 manufacturing in there. In Sage 50 manufacturing, items could be booked into quarantine when they were originally received, whether that be from a purchase order or a made item from a works order on there. And SIM50 will allow the same. The difference is in SIM50, a stock item at any point can be moved back into quarantine for inspection to come out. So identifying items that look like they've been damaged, you can move those into quarantine at any time on there. SIM50 also allows for multiple units of measure within the manufacturing side of things there. So stock items that you buy in boxes of 100 but issue in individuals on there, or items that you buy in a reel but use in meters on there, you can deal with much more easily than Sage 50 manufacturing allowed. And the other thing that Sim 50 has in from a stock point of view is a more controlled stock take module on there that allows you to mark that items are being counted for stock. And at that point, it gives you the ability to say, well, while I'm doing this count, I don't want to allow anybody to be moving that stock. So would stop people being able to issue it out to works orders or to sales orders while that stock count is being taken on there. From a usability point of view, Sage 50 Sim 50 allows you to attach documents specifically to individual traceable records. So you can have C of Cs attached to a particular batch of stock on there. And there's also the barcode scanning for stock movements within the shop floor data.
Sorry, Sean, you're muted.
Thank you for that. Sorry. What was the can somebody tell me the last thing I said when I got muted there?
Attaching documents.
Attaching documents, right. Okay, bear with me. Thank you very much for that. I'll just quickly jump back to the previous slide on there. So the only other thing I'd said on there is obviously the ability to attach documents to be traceable records on there, and also the shop floor data capture module that I mentioned, which allows you to do barcode scanning of stock movements on the system there. So again, issuing stock out to either just sales orders and booking goods in, or going through to the works order side of things on there. So in terms of the bill of materials module on there, a couple of things that that Sim 50 has changed from a usability point of view on there. One is that within the trial kitting functionality of Sim 50, you're able to trial kit multiple bills of materials at the same time on there. So one of the limitations of Sage 50 manufacturing was you could only trial kit one bomb at a time on there, which meant that if you'd got components which were commonly used against multiple bombs, you wouldn't always get the correct results on that side of things there. Within Sim 50, you can pick multiple bombs to trial kit at the same time on there. One of the other things that Sim 50 has is a reverse build functionality in there. So if you have made something or told the system you've made something and realize you've made an error on there, you can reverse that and put all of the components back into stock at the touch of a button on there. So it's kind of like an undo function on there. Whereas in 50 manufacturing, you'd have needed to write off the finished stock item and then adjust back in each component used one at a time on that side of things on there. From a control point of view, the bomb, and from a costing point of view, Sim 50 allows you to assign overheads to machine times, labor times and materials on there, so you can get a more detailed costing analysis if you're wanting to, so taking into account of things like light and heat and apportioning those costs to items that you make on there. A function that might be useful for certain industries is the operation times in Sim 50 goes right down to seconds rather than just hours and minutes on there. So if you have very, short, sharp operations on there, you've got the ability to deal with that. Another thing that you're able to do around the operations, which goes into the bill of materials that then becomes useful at planning an MRP stage, is you can assign components being needed against specific operations on there. What that would mean is potentially, if you've got a bill of materials that includes the box you put an item in, but packing is obviously the last operation you have, rather than MRP saying, well, we need to buy a load of boxes in when we start making our item, MRP can pick up and say, well, actually, we only need to buy those boxes at the very end when we're ready to pack the items on that side of things on there. So moving over to the quotation side of things on there. Now, the quotation side in Sim50 is the area that's probably changed the most from what was the estimating module in Sage 50 manufacturing on there. And part of the reason for that is, the estimating module in Sage 50 manufacturing almost became a bit too complicated in itself and tried to do lots of things for lots of people, and sort of as a result of that made itself quite cumbersome on that side of things. So the quotations element within Sim50 is a more simplified, streamlined version of that on there. So what that will allow you to do is you can create sort of one-off quotes in a similar way to estimating. What you can also do is assign bill of materials items that you've already got on the system there and can configure those on the fly within a quotation on the system there. You can easily raise sales, purchase orders or works orders directly from the quotation record in there. So again, if you didn't use the MRP planning on there, you can still be raising the requirements for those items as you go through on that side of things on there. There's also a greater degree of control on the system there. So in the Sage 50 version of estimates, you ended up with really a single item per estimate on the system there. Within Sim50, you can have multiple items on one quotation there, and you could also have different price breaks for those different items within the same quotation on that side of things there. And from an analysis point of view, Sim50 allows you a more detailed profit and loss analysis of your quotations and sort of one-off jobs on there. So moving on to works orders on there, Sim50 has improved the flexibility and the options you have around linking works orders. So it's a lot easier to retrospectively link a works order to an existing sales order or to parent works orders on the system on there. Again, Sim50 have added the same trial kit functionality that they've got for bombs against works orders on the system there, which would allow you to do a trial kit for multiple works orders at the same time, and allows you to raise purchase orders and other works orders off the back of that. What that could be used for is a more simplified MRP side of things on there. So if you don't use the planning option fully on there and only want to be buying items based on what you have in production, you could use that trial kitting for producing those sort of purchase orders on the back of that side of things on there. Another feature that has been added to the works orders is sort of in-build labels on there. So Sim50 will allow you to print the labels before you've actually made the items, unlike Sage 50 manufacturing, where you only produced the labels when you told the system you'd made the items on there. What producing the labels in advance allows as well is if you've got traceable items on there, you can assign what those finished batch numbers or serial numbers are going to be before you've completed the works order on that side of things again on there. So something that some users will use on there. The other thing you've got, again, similar to the reverse build, you've got the ability to reverse completion of a works order on a system there. So an undo option if you've, incorrectly said that you've made items that actually haven't been made on the system there, you can just reverse that out within the system rather than manually making adjustments to it. And linked again, you've got the shop floor data capture module for barcode scanning. And again, this isn't just recording time against works orders that Sage 50 did. It's also the ability to issue stock to a works order at that point of time on there. From a control point of view, when you allocate traceable items to works orders, you're able to identify which batch or serial numbers you're allocating to a particular works order. That's something that Sage 50 manufacturing didn't do. It just allocated stock to an item on there. And one of the confusions that could cause is if you printed picking lists for two works orders that each had the same traceable component on at the same time, it could, for both works or both picking lists, it could tell you to go and pick the same batch of items on there because it just told you to pick the oldest batch first. By actually allocating a batch on there, Sim 50 gets rid of that because you can only allocate a batch to one works order on that side of things there. You're also, when you're issuing stock to works orders, you can issue by works order, which in the same way that Sage 50 manufacturing does it, or you can issue by a stock item to multiple works orders on there. So if you've got one stock item that's needed for 10 works orders, you can do that on one click rather than going into each works order individually on there. From an analysis point of view, a couple of things that to sort of point out that Sim 50 have added on there is, one, they've added a rough cut capacity planning schedule on there, so you can view how much work is being put onto a particular resource on there and see where you've got under or over capacity on a particular resource on there. The other thing that they do is, because they record start dates against each operation on the system there, as well as having a works order list view within the system that Sage 50 manufacturing's got, you can also switch that to a work to list on there, so see which order operations need to be completed in, and within that, which is a sort of real-time view of things on there, you could filter it so individual workstations would just see their list of jobs on there and what that job is, rather than they need to work on a particular works order on there. The other thing that the Sim 50 will allow you for is you've got the ability to archive works orders on there. So rather than, so from a tidying up point of view, and rather than keeping works orders on the list that you aren't going to, that have been completed, but you still want to see information for, you can move these into an archive section to keep things tidier on that side of things there. So from a planning point of view, one of the really useful things that Sim 50 introduces is the ability to schedule running of planning on there. And the two ways where I think they've really improved on this, one is that you can set up the scheduling of the planning running within the program itself, rather than it being something that's done as a SQL schedule in the back end side of things there. So it makes it much easier for the user to do. And the other thing that was sort of a great improvement and a real sort of pain in the way that Sage 50 manufacturing used to deal with it is that it's not just the running of the MRP that you can schedule, you're scheduling the running of the read demand at the same time on there. In Sage 50 manufacturing, if you'd not run the read demand before you ran the MRP, the information that you're being shown was out of date on that side of things. So they've brought those two things together on there. Within the planning and the reading demand and the MRP, Sim50s also gives you more option of selecting what you want to run your planning based on the system there. So you can run it across the whole program, but you could also run it if you wanted to just against certain stock items, certain works orders, certain sales orders. And within that, you can also include that to show just sales orders for a particular customer on there if you wanted to, on that side of things on there. They've also improved the sales forecasting functionality within the program on there. So for one, when you create forecasts, they've given you more options on what's the time period that your forecast wants to be on. So it can be days, weeks, months, or quarters, whereas Sage 50 manufacturing was just based on weekly buckets on there. But it will also allow you to tie a forecast to a particular customer on there, which is something Sage 50 manufacturing could never do. So if you were forecasting, for writing forecasts for different customers that were buying the same products on there, it would look at all the sales orders of that product against those forecasts. Now you can set a forecast of this is the quantity of a product I expect this customer to buy, and compare that to just the sales orders from that customer on that side of things there. Another thing on the analysis that they've added within the sections there is that they have introduced into the system there on all the views a parent tag option on there. So it's far easier to see, the ultimate reason that demand's created of a recommendation on the system on there. So what I'm going to do now is just switch into the program itself, just have a look at some of those points and sort of touch on some of those areas on there. So this is the home screen of Sim50 manufacturing on there. Like Sage 50 manufacturing on there, this is a separate program that sits alongside the Sage 50 accounts on there. When you first come into the system here, it will give you a bit of information around your data in there. It will tell you the last time the validation was run. I've restored data on here, so it's an old information on there, and will also give you sort of records of any information on the system there. In terms of the navigation, very much like Sage 50 accounts on there. Down the left-hand side, you've got the different modules on here. So as I sort of click into those different modules, it will open that information on there. Across the top of each of these screens on there, you've got the action buttons on there. And what you'll see is the consistency that in my stock control, I've obviously got the ability to create new, amend and view details. That information is copied across the various items, the various modules in the system on there. Again, within the sort of list views of information on the system there, you've got the ability of adding in and selecting the columns for the list views that you want to see on the system there. Again, what you'll see on here are lists of all of the product, all of the information in there. So things that would historically just have existed in Sage 50 accounts in there, things like the tax code information on there, we can add to sort of list views on there. You can also see on the list view of information here, I can see things like the quantities that are in stock, quantities that are being allocated, and free stock information from a list view point of view on the system there. If I go in to amend a stock record on there, again, what you'll see, very much like the Sage 50 accounts view, I've got the different tabs of information down the side on here. So all of the information that was held in both Sage 50 accounts and in Sage Manufacturing is now held in Sim 50 on there. So things like on the financials here, I can see my nominal codes on the system here. I can make changes to those nominal codes to write back to the accounts on there. And as I mentioned earlier, with the controls on there, I can limit either who could see that information, or even if people can see it, whether they could change that information on the system on here. I've got a traceability tab on here. So as I touched on before, you choose on a product by product record whether that item is a traceable item or not. So you can see here, I've selected that this is a traceable item on here. I can say that it's traceable by batch number rather than serial number on here. And then I've got some options on here to say, do I want the system to create a batch number for me, which might be relevant for items we make, or I can say, no, I want to manually enter batch numbers. So if it's items that I'm receiving in that relate to supplier, where I'm bringing my supplier's details in, I can bring that side of things in. My suppliers tab, very similar to what was in product information in manufacturing. So who my different suppliers are, who my favorite supplier is, their different part numbers and lead times on there. The units of measure function I mentioned earlier, so I can show that I buy screws in boxes of 100, but I use them in eaches. So one screw makes up 100th of a box on there. On the MRP side of things here, this is looking at the sort of the planning information that was held in 50 manufacturing there. So all of the things like horizon days, my ordering methods on there. One of the things that has changed on here is, in addition to aggregating just on days, I can do aggregates based on the calendar week or calendar month on that side of things on there, and bring that information through on there. My attached files that I mentioned, so I can bring in files of information and hold links to documents on the system there. My additional information tab, this will bring through all the information, so things like the web tab, which exists in a product in Sage 50 that Sage 50 manufacturing just never saw. All of that information is held and shared on this tab here, but also additional information that I can type in here. So if I want descriptions to go on certificates of conformity, or documentation on picking lists and dispatch notes, I can record that information in the system on here. The analysis tab is looking at the sort of additional information that I can add onto the system on here. The audit log, this is touching on what I spoke about earlier on the system on here. So what I can see is earlier on this morning, I logged in and I changed the nominal code for the sales of this particular product on here from 4,000 to 4,001. So all changes made would be held against the system here, and that functionality sits within sort of works orders and bills of materials as well on that side of things there. History is what you're used to, is the sort of analysis of movements of a stock item on there. And what we have at the bottom here is, because this is a traceable item on here, I can see information relating to all of the batches of this particular stock item on here. So on the record here, I can see these individual batches, and against an individual batch, I can see the history relating to that. So again, one of the things that people found difficult within Sage 50 manufacturing, if they were using traceability, is it wasn't always easy to see what quantity you had left in a batch. You'd have to do a few clicks to go into a record to see that information, whereas here it's shown on the information there. Or alternatively, I do have a traceability option here, which is more in line with the traceability view that Sage 50 manufacturing had, albeit I've got the ability to show the quantity of that are left in stock of that particular batch on there. I can add in extra columns on there. So I could also, if I wanted to, and I thought it was going to be relevant, show whether there are any allocations against a batch from that view and things on there. In terms of movements of stock items in there, again, the system will pick up and recognize changes that need to be made depending on the type of stock item that you're looking for on there. So when I click on an adjustment for a non-stock item, I can just move a quantity in, a quantity out, or move a quantity into quarantine at that point in time, as I sort of mentioned before, that you wouldn't be able to do within 50 manufacturing. The alternative is, if I do it that for a traceable item on there, it will give me a slightly different screen on there, because it's going to say, well, if I'm booking something in, I'm not just booking a quantity in, I need to give it a batch number that I'm booking in. If I am moving an item on there, I need to move that, record the actual batch that I'm moving on that side of things on there. What I've also got the ability to do, as I say in here, and again, in one place rather than hidden away, that Sage 50 manufacturing was a bit sort of guilty of, is anything to do with stock movements that external is referring to Sage 50 generated things. So I can receive items from my purchase orders from the system on here and see which items are coming in against the item there. When I'm booking goods in, I can search either by a sales order number on there, or I could search by the stock item I'm booking in at that point in time there. And again, record how many I'm receiving and whether I want to receive those straight into stock or to quarantine them at that point in time on there. One of the other things that I mentioned was in relation to the stock take functionality within Sim50. So creating a stock take on there, I can choose to create a stock take. I can either select individual items or look to count all the items that I have in stock on there. Prior to doing that, I do have the option of taking items out that I don't want to do a count for if I want to. But in this case, if I select everything, I can produce, say that I'm starting a stock count, I can produce a stock take count sheet on there, and I can choose whether I want to show people what the expected value is or not when I produce that stock count on there. When I come back to, I can also export that out into Excel and could import results in from Excel on there. As I come to update that count, what I can do is I can come in, enter a quantity that I've counted on there, and what it will start doing is marking, in colours what I have counted on there, and I can save progress at that point in there. So not set it through and say that I've made the change, just say that I'm working on that at this point on here. And what that means is when I come back to that in the future, I can see that I've already counted that, or I can hide that information on the system there. The other thing that will allow me to do within the stock take report, if I want to or not, is if I try and make an adjustment now to those stock items, it will tell me, sorry, you can't change anything to do with the quantity you have in stock of that product because you've got a stock take in progress on there. Just so it doesn't catch me out later on, I'll just cancel that stock take on there. So in terms of the bills of materials on there, the actual information that's held in them is very, very similar and has taken a lot of the functionality from Sage 50 manufacturing in there. So you have got the additional information against things like overheads on there that can be included. When I look at the components on there, similar view of the screen, the slight difference is what Sim50 has done to draw attention and make it easier for customers to see is down at the bottom here, you can see information that was normally hidden away and you have to drill into. So seeing things like fixed quantities and whether it was a bulk issue item or not, or again, on the operations side of things, down at the bottom here, rather than editing an operation to see how long the timings were going to take for that on there, you can see all of that information on the bottom of the screen on there. And the other thing that Sim50 does a lot more and holds a lot more information around is the costing of bills of materials on there. So in Sage 50 manufacturing, you just have the last cost price on there. On Sim50, it will keep a record of every time you have costed that item on there. But what it will also allow me to do is if I go into a breakdown of that particular costing on there, I can see the top level items on there, but then rather than having to print a report to try and find out how that cost of £4,000 worth of materials was made up, I can see from here all of the components used, the quantities, and what their cost prices were at that point in time that they were costed. The same with the operations on there. So a couple of other things, as I sort of mentioned, I can highlight multiple items now and trial kit all of those items at the same time on there. So if they are sharing components, I can see all of that information from one screen on there. I've got obviously the build functionality that we spoke about before. I've also got that reverse build option to put things back into stock at that side of things there. And some of the, traditional things that you would look at. So the explosion view is still there to go into and look at the explosion view of a particular stock item on there. And likewise, the implosion view on there. In terms of the planning side of things on there, as I said, the planning side of things works very similarly. So can set the planning through on there. What it will do as you go through the planning on there is it will tell you the list of items that it's bringing through, will tell you items that have been excluded from that list on there, so that you can see, there are items excluded, and then having known that, can switch to say whether you want to look and drill into what their exclusions are on that side of things. If you're happy with that, you can go and run the MRP. Again, as I said, you can either run the full MRP on here, or if I wanted to, I could run it to say I just want to run it for sales orders, and could just run it for specific sales orders or sales orders for a specific customer if I wanted to. In this case, I'll just run it for all items on there. And what you will see on this list on here then is, against each recommendation number here, I can see exactly what the parent number is on there. So this pine edging was needed to be bought to satisfy sales order 13 on there. So I can see that information on there. The other thing that parent tags makes it very easy for on there is, if you want to run your MRP so that you want to action everything that relates to a particular sales order on there, on my quick search here, I can run a quick search for sales order 13 on here. It will show me now all of the items that were needed to go into, or that were needed for sales order 13, even though some of them, like this leg one here, might be going to satisfy more than one sales order. I can see that option there, and then would have the ability to sort of process that information on there. So I can bring that information through sort of very easily on that side of things on there. If I just filter that out, what I'm going to do just quickly on mine is, I'll just, for the purpose of this, to put some more information in, I'll just action all of those made items on there. So very similar to before, mark those as being green, and if I've got the file shown, will tell me the works order that's created on there. So when I look at my works order list on here, I can see sort of full list of my works orders. So what you're sort of used to seeing as a view on there. The other way that I could look at it is I can switch that, as I mentioned, to a works to list on there. So I can see a list of all of the operations that go through on there. And if I wanted to, and I've got those set up in a particular way in there, I could have that filtered. So just anything that's going through the inspection resource here, that can then be their list of, these are the processes that you need to work through, and sort those into the relevant order that information needs to go through on that side of things on there. Because I've started late and jumped in on this, what I'll do is I'll stop on the product's information, the product demo there, and just finish off the slides on there. But if people have specific questions, say please ask them in the chat, and I'll come back to those sort of later on that side of things on there. So as I've mentioned before, there's a full migration tool from SIM50, from Sage 50 manufacturing into SIM50 on there. We'll take all of the data through. The caveat of the information it doesn't bring through is around the estimating, because the quotations has been rewritten simpler. That's the one area where it won't bring historical estimates and things through on there. As part of the migration, there are a couple of prerequisites to carry out, so just tidying up to make sure there aren't errors in the Sage 50 data and things like that. Typically a migration will take somewhere between about 15 minutes and a couple of hours on that side of things there. So what we would be doing as part of the training process, the UAT testing on there, is we'd do a test data migration first to look at the data and the training on there. That will also give us an idea of any work that needs doing prior to the data being, migrated live, and also gives an idea of how long that migration would take on there, so that the subsequent data migration that we can carry out immediately prior to go live will reduce in as little downtime as possible on there. From testing and things like that, we'd typically say that we wouldn't expect anybody to be down for the data migration for more than a morning, for instance, on that side of things. But obviously that will depend on individual users' data and the information in the system on there. So in terms of the commercials around the SIM50 solution, as is the way of most software is going now, it's based on a monthly subscription on there. As I mentioned before, it's a more modular approach than Sage 50 manufacturing on there. So it's not a case of you buy a batch controller or a manufacturing controller and you get all those modules. You choose the individual modules that are relevant to you and the number of users you want. As I say, it's monthly subscriptions, so you can be adding on and reducing out, adding on and sort of reducing out users on there. I'll speak to people we'll speak to people individually in more detail about exact costs of different user systems, because with the more modular approach, we're not entirely sure, depending on how you use the system. Just because you had a manufacturing controller system in there, sometimes you'd have that because you wanted to, for instance, record times against works orders that you could only do with that module, but it meant you automatically got quotations that which you wouldn't need. With SIM50, we can do more, we can be more specific for you on that side of things. As a guideline for what we'd class as almost like a typical product, so a 3-user with the batch controller, which would be a 4-module system, which would include the stock control, the bill of materials, the planning and the MRP. That would cost £264 a month for the subscription on the software, the support, and any updates on there. Again, the amount of installation and training consultancy time is going to vary on a user by user basis, depending on how they're using the software, the number of users that they've got, the number of bespoke reports that they've currently got that may need rewriting on that side of things on there. So we've given a bit of a guideline on that side of things there. I'll quickly run through this because SimFit I've included this in just to show that there is a roadmap and there is development still being done on Sim50 on there. So additional areas that they're looking to add on there. One of the big areas that they're looking to add is a carbon footprint calculator across modules on there. And what that will be is almost like a costing module in there, but will record what your carbon footprint is of manufacturing particular products on there, will allow that to be output into a report and then taken to the Carbon Trust for offsetting if you choose to do that side of things on there. There are some roadmap looking at introducing the ability of copying stock items and having product record templates in there for stock creation, graphical interface for bills of materials on there. There is a plan around expanding the capacity planning. So at the moment it's on rough cut capacity planning, but looking at sort of improvements around that side of things. And there are also potentials for adding additional modules in there. So adding more of a servicing, maintenance and warranty sort of modules on that side of things on there.